Hi there, welcome here. This is Teacher James from Think Academy, and today I'll be teaching you a certain skill for solving equations. The name of the skill is called splitting method. So let's see a certain question first. The question is, what is the value of 1 over 1 times 2 plus 1 over 2 times 3? And normally we can just solve the question by calculation. 1 over 1 times 2 is equal to 1 over 2. And 1 over 2 times 3 is equal to 1 over 6. So we just do 1 over 2 plus 1 over 6, and everybody can get the answer. But today, I'll teach you the splitting method. When we got 1 over 1 times 2, we found that the top number 1 is the difference between 1 and 2, which are the two bottom numbers. So we can change the top number 1 into 2 minus 1 over 1 times 2. And same thing, we can change the 1 over 2 times 3 into 3 minus 2 over 2 times 3. Since the second one is also the difference between the two bottom numbers, 3 minus 2. And when we do this, 2 minus 1 over 1 times 2 can be split into the first top number 2 over the same bottom number 1 times 2 minus the second top number 1 over the same bottom number 1 times 2. So let's do that. 2 over 1 times 2 minus 1 over 1 times 2. And let's do the same thing for the second fraction. Plus 3 over 2 times 3 minus 2 over 2 times 3. And then everyone, you can then see the 2 and the 2 are cancelled. 1 and 1 are cancelled. 3 and 3 are cancelled. 2 and 2 are cancelled. For each fraction, the top number is cancelled with one of the two bottom numbers. So then we just have first the fraction is turning to 1 over 1, and second fraction is turning to 1 over 2. And the third one is turning to 1 over 2. Last one is turning to 1/3. And then you see for the middle fractions, all the middle fractions, we have minus 1 over 2 and a plus 1 over 2. When you subtract the number and add the same number, they are canceled out. So in the end, we just have what is left. In the end, we have the first one. We have 1 over 1 and minus 1 over 3 left. And that's the only two fractions left, right? So we just have 1 minus 1/3, and it is equal to 2 over 3. Okay. So everyone can see, with the splitting method, when you split every single fraction into the difference between two fractions, in the end, all the middle parts can be canceled out, right? So we only have the first one left and the last one left. And then the calculation will be much easier because you don't have to calculate all the middle part. Only the first fraction and the last fraction should be calculated, right? And be careful, everyone. This is known as the splitting method, and there's a requirement for using the splitting method. We can only use the splitting method when the top number of the fraction is the difference between the two bottom numbers. Say 1 is the difference between 1 and 2. 1 is the difference between 2 and 3. Under this circumstance, we can use the splitting method. Otherwise, we cannot use that. Okay, so let's do a recap, everyone. To use the splitting method, we split each fraction into the difference between two fractions. Thus, all the middle fractions can be canceled out. And that's how we use the splitting method and how it works. With the splitting method, everyone, let's see one more question. Let's see an equation right over here. Okay, so the equation is x over 3 times 4 plus x over 4 times 5 plus x over 5 times 6 plus x over 6 times 7. That is equal to 4. And we're getting the value for x. And everyone, let's see. If we want to split every single fraction over here, as we said, the requirement is that the top number should be the difference between the two bottom numbers. However, here x is not the difference between 4 and 3. X is not the difference between 5 and 4. And it's neither the difference between 6 and 5 or 7, and 6, all right? But I found that for all of these 4 fractions, they all have the x as the same factor, as the common factor. So we say whenever we have common factor, we can fact out the common factor and by using the distributive law, right? Since they all have the x as a common factor, we can fact out the x and turn the left side of the equation into x times, in the parentheses, 1 over 3 times 4 plus 1 over 4 times 5 plus 1 over 5 times 6 plus 1 over 6 times 7. And that is equal to 4. So this is a step 1 for the same equation. We fact out the x. Step 2, when you see these 4 fractions in the parentheses, you'll find we can use the splitting method. Because this time, the 1, it is the difference between 4 and 3. It is the difference between 5 and 4. It is the difference between 6 and 5. And same thing for 7 and 6. So everyone, for the parentheses, we can split that into 1 over the first bottom number minus 1 over the second bottom number. And for the second fraction, all the same. Plus 1 over 4 minus 1 over 5 plus 1 over 5 minus 1 over 6 plus 1 over 6 minus 1 over 7. And that is equal to still 4 on the right side. And as we said, then if you look at the middle parts, you'll find all of the middle fractions can be cancelled out. Here we have minus 1 over 4 plus 1 over 4. And these two, they say bye because they are cancelled out. Minus 1 over 5 plus 1 over 5. Minus 1 over 6 plus 1 over 6. They are all cancelled out all the way except for the first one and the last one. So then the equation is turning to, everyone, step 3. Step 3, we just have x times 1 over 3 minus 1 over 7. That's equal to 4. And the calculation of 1 over 3 minus 1 over 7 is pretty easy. If you calculate that, you'll find that is equal to 4 over 21. 4 over 21 times x is equal to 4. And everybody, you say, what's the value of x? Everyone, x is equal to 21. Okay, so this is how we solve the equation right over here by using the splitting method. Okay, everyone, let's do a quick recap of the splitting method. Whenever we see a fraction and the bottom number are the product of 2 numbers and the top number is the difference between the 2 bottom numbers, we can split that fraction into 1 over the first bottom number minus 1 over the second bottom number. Okay, this is the splitting method and we can use it to solve the equation. Okay, that's all for today's question. Thank you so much.